Hello and welcome to another IELTS essay writing video. In today's video we're going to run through an exercise that will test your ability to follow an essay's argument as well as test the lexical resources that you have. If you find this video helpful, I encourage you to visit my blog at IELTSIELTS.com and my website dedicated to the online ESL community, which is eslmeet.com. Now, in today's video, we're going to read an essay together, and we're going to choose the correct wording as we go along. So, for example, if we see a sentence such as this, the blue text will provide us with two options that we can choose from, and what we have to do is choose the correct wording that would be both grammatically correct and would be structurally correct for our essay. So in this example we have, while living in Milan, I had the opportunity to learn Italian. Or, while I had lived in Milan, I had the opportunity to learn Italian. And of course the correct answer would be while living in Milan. So as we go through the essay, I will pause at 10 different points and give you a few seconds to review what it is we're trying to argue in the essay and to choose the correct wording that would fit in that portion of our writing. Okay, my hope is that you will share your score out of 10 in the comments section of this video. Let's get started. The essay question that we are looking at today was seen in Peterborough in the UK, and the question reads, many countries want to move factories and big industrial firms out of towns and into rural areas. Do you think the advantages of this outweigh the disadvantages? Okay. Now, what you see in this essay question is a very straightforward pattern. We're given first a background sentence, and then we are given instructions. So the instructions ask us specifically, do we feel that there are more advantages to the proposed situation, or are there more disadvantages? So that's straightforward. Now let's look at the background sentence. This background sentence reads, many countries want to move factories and big industrial firms out of towns and into rural areas. If the word rural is new, this is a word that refers to perhaps more of a countryside or an underdeveloped area. So, a town or a city would be an area where lots of people live. A rural area would be an area where perhaps not so many people live. It's an underdeveloped area. Okay, so the background sentence is fairly straightforward. It's just saying that countries are more interested in moving their sources of industry into less residentially dense areas. Now, in the essay that we're looking at today, the argument is made that there are more advantages to this than disadvantages. So as we go through the exercise, please keep this in mind, because at times you will be given two options for wording that are both grammatically correct, but the problem is that one is not in keeping with what the essay is trying to argue, which is that there are more advantages than disadvantages. Okay, now let's start the exercise together. So, our essay reads, recently movements have been made the world over to relocate factories and industrial companies out of small towns and into more rural areas. Or, recently movements have been made around the earth to relocate factories and industrial companies out of small towns and into more rural areas. Okay, and if you answered the world over, you would be correct. The phrase around the world, around the earth is perhaps is grammatically correct. The problem is that it is not a an English colloquialism. So using this kind of wording is awkward. It's not what people would normally or most naturally say. The world over is a phrase that is used in English to mean everywhere or perhaps all over the globe. It is felt that on the whole, this strategy hinders more advantages than disadvantages. Or, it is felt that on the whole, this strategy brings with it more advantages than disadvantages. Okay, and for question number 2, if you answered brings with it, you would be correct. The word hinder means to hold back or to deter. Maybe deter is a new word. I'll just write that for you very quickly. Deter. And as we said at the beginning of this video, the essay argues that there are more advantages than disadvantages. So here we could not use a word like deter or hinder. So brings with it is the phrase that would be correct. Okay, let's continue. The subjects of public health and child labor will be analyzed to prove this thesis true. Okay, so we know our first supporting paragraph is going to talk about health hazards that come along with a factory being located in a residentially dense area. The second supporting paragraph is going to talk about the problems that come of child labor that come about when factories are located too close to residentially dense areas. So, supporting paragraph number 1. For one, the health hazards that derive from industrial and residential proximity are unfortunate phenomena that have been exhibited many times along history, or that have been exhibited many times throughout history. Okay, and here our correct answer would be throughout history. Often the word throughout and history are coupled, so it's something that a native English speaker would say or write more naturally. So that's our topic sentence. Now let's get to our example of this. The nuclear meltdown in the Ukrainian city of Chernobyl acts as an extreme example of this. In 1990's Chernobyl, townspeople lived in close proximity to a nuclear plant that provided energy to the region. And I just want to direct your attention for a second to the way that this is worded here. So basically, it's a way to word something very concisely. I've given the period of time, which is the 1990s, and the place, which is Chernobyl. And this might be a wording that you don't see often, but in 1990s Chernobyl, it just means that during this period that we're talking about, and the location, which is Chernobyl. So it might be something you, as a student, might want to make a note of. Because the plant was located so closely to the townspeople, its meltdown was particularly harmful to the health of many, causing birth defects, growth abnormalities, and various forms of cancer. Or we could say this: As a result, the plant was located so closely to the townspeople, its meltdown was particularly harmful to the, and then it just goes on. So here the correct answer would be because. So because is a word that is used to initiate an explanation for something. As a result is typically a phrase that is used when we're going to draw a conclusion. So at this point in the supporting paragraph, we're discussing, we're trying to explain the significance of this example in relation to what our thesis is. So we would use the word because. Because the plant was located so closely to the townspeople, its meltdown was particularly harmful to the health of many, causing birth defects, growth abnormalities, and various forms of cancer. As this example makes clear, the benefits that come from moving industrial production facilities out of towns can be seen. Or, as this example makes clear, the benefits that come from moving industrial production facilities out of towns are witnessed clearly. Okay, now often when we draw a conclusion, we use the phrase that something can be seen. If we say, you know, this example makes it clear that this is true, so this is something that can be seen. Or witnessed clearly would not be a very naturally sounding phrase to use in this instance. So can be seen. Okay, let's continue to the second supporting paragraph. In addition to health promotion, moving factories away from residentially sparse areas may help to curb disturbing trends in child labor among developing countries. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had put two questions in here, but this would be an extra challenge, I suppose. In addition to health promoting, moving factories away from residentially dense areas may help to curb disturbing trends in labor among developing countries. And I'll give you a few seconds to look at those wordings. Okay, the first one is, of course, a simple grammatical question, and we need a noun here. So we would choose health promotion. The second question is in relation to our argument. Now, these two words, the word sparse and the word dense, have opposite meanings. Sparse refers to something that is not particularly dense. I can't think of another word for dense. So people who live sparsely would live in an area where they do not live close together. There is not a particular closeness to things that are that are sparse. So sparse does not mean to be close together. Dense means to be very tightly packed together. So for example, Hong Kong is a very, very dense city where people live in very high buildings very close together. Areas of Siberia in Russia are very sparse. People do not live very closely together. So now if you think about what our argument was, in that this essay is arguing that factories should be moved to more rural areas. So the sentence reads, moving factories away from residentially sparse or dense areas may help to curb disturbing trends in child labor. Now what does curb mean? Curb means to lessen something. So the answer here would be dense. Moving factories away from residentially dense areas would help to lower trends in child labor among developing countries. In many small towns in Anhui, China, for example, high school aged children who grow up near factories are often enticed to leave school and start careers. Or high school aged children who grow up near factories are often dissuaded to leave school and start careers. Okay. So now here we're giving an example of small towns, and these would not be, extremely large areas. And we're trying to argue, as you know, that that when factories are located to these kinds of places, that people are often encouraged to leave high school. That's what we're trying to say in our example. And I'm sorry to pick on Anhui. I don't. I know. I'm sure this, this is probably not true for all areas of Anhui, but I just have a bit of personal experience with that, so I'm just sharing this example. So here we would use enticed. Enticed means to encourage something or to tempt something. So we're saying that people are tempted to leave school and start careers. Dissuaded is the opposite of persuade. It would be, not encouraged or actually pushed against. So this would be that they would be, encouraged not to leave school. That's what dissuaded would say here. But that's not what we're trying to argue. We're trying to argue that when factories are located closer to some of these towns, that high school level students are encouraged to leave their studies and start jobs. These same trends are not seen among Shanghai high school students. However, where residentially dense areas are typically not proximate to industrial plants, or these same trends are commonly seen among Shanghai high school students, however, where residentially dense areas are typically not proximate to industrial plants. Now, the key to getting this question correct is to look in here, where we're sharing a bit more information. So, residentially dense areas are typically not proximate to industrial plants. This is the opposite of our Anhui example. So because this is the opposite, then we would of course say not seen among Shanghai high school students to make our argument stronger. Commonly seen would just mean that this is something that is normally seen in Shanghai. So not seen. Thus, this makes it clear that townspeople living in the vicinity of factories may experience a reduction in their overall level of education. So vicinity, this just means in the same area or close to. So people living in the vicinity of factories may experience a reduction in their overall level of education. Therefore, the advantages of relocating factories obviously outweigh the disadvantages. Okay, let's go to our last question. Following this look at how a strategy for industrial displacement would lead to both health benefits and a reduction in child labor, it is felt that this course of action should be supported. Or, it is felt that this course of work should be supported. Okay, and in English nobody says or very seldomly do people say a course of work. Typically, the phrase is a course of action. So, and the phrase course of action, if this is new to you, it just means like a plan for something. So if you want to use this in your essays in the future, you can use it to replace the word plan in many instances. It is hoped worldwide measures are taken to realize this vision. Okay, so that concludes our activity, and there were 10 questions in total, so kindly share the score that you received and let me know if you would like to see more videos like this in the future. I received some positive responses from the people that had watched the first 2 videos that I made like this, so so just let me know what you want to see, and I will create more lessons in that style. Thank you for watching, and have a nice week.